Chair recognizes myself for questions. I chair the Homeland Security Committee, and so I've been a student of counterterrorism for quite some time. I was a federal prosecutor as well. I know Osama bin Laden was in Khartoum, then Afghanistan. I saw the rise of ISIS and the caliphate during the tenure of my chairmanship, and fortunately, we've crushed the caliphate, and we've defeated ISIS in Iraq and Syria. But now I'm seeing a new phenomenon. I went to Egypt and the Sinai, and we saw the explosion in the mosque, the downing of the Russian airliner. I was in Tunisia, met with the Libyan team. It's in chaos. Boko Haram is taking over in parts of Africa, AQIM, and other terrorist organizations. What I'm worried about is that as we squeeze a balloon, they're going to pop up somewhere else. And Africa, it seems to be the safe haven. They seek chaos. They seek ungoverned territories and safe havens. And so I see, if we're trying to look in the future, it's actually happening now, that Africa is going to be the spot. It's going to be the hot spot. There is a Trans-Sahara Counterterrorism Partnership that includes 11 African countries. I know the state has worked very diligently on this. And Mr. Secretary, I was just hopeful you could give me maybe an update on how that partnership is working.
Well, the phenomenon you described is quite accurate, Congressman. And I defer to Undersecretary Trachtenberg on this, but we're very focused on where those terrorist fighters that are leaving the caliphate, what's left of it, and there isn't much, in Syria and Iraq, where they're going. Certainly Africa, parts of Africa, Libya, northeastern Nigeria, elsewhere, seems to be a landing place. But we're also seeing that in other areas in South Asia and in the Pacific as well, in the Philippines. Right. So it's a priority for us to not win the fight against the caliphate in Syria and Iraq, but lose track of where all of those foreign fighters are going. Unfortunately, Libya has been an attractive place for them because of the ungoverned areas that I described earlier and that you mentioned and know so well. But I defer to my colleague, Undersecretary Trachtenberg.
Congressman, I think you put your finger on the crux of the problem here when you talked about victories in certain areas, but yet leading to problems in others. I tend to look at this, the problem of countering terrorism and extremist organizations. It's something like a balloon, if I could use that analogy. If you squeeze the balloon in a certain place, you will narrow it and take the air out of that place, but it will also balloon in other areas. It will expand in other areas. I think to a certain degree, that's what we're seeing by the flow of foreign terrorist fighters from one area to another. I think our job in working by, with, and through our partners, and in working with our colleagues at the State Department and elsewhere, is to deflate the balloon in order to solve the problem of terrorists and extremist groups moving simply from one location to some other ungoverned space where they feel they have more freedom of action.
Can you comment on the role of NGOs? I was at the Munich Security Conference, and I met with Bill Gates, the Gates Foundation. They do some great work in Africa. Bono and the One Campaign. Is that helpful, Secretary?
NGOs are not just helpful, but essential. We partner with them everywhere, particularly for humanitarian assistance. PEPFAR relies on partnering with NGOs. Really key for us.
I think it'd be key to stability. I think what we need is stability, and it's very fragile and unstable.
Good governance, health, economic development, humanitarian assistance, basic stability issues that we need in places like Raqqa or in Mosul for just water, sanitation, demining, medical services, all key things that need to be restored in places that have just been decimated.
I agree with Secretary Sullivan on that, sir. It is true. Again, what DOD is doing is basically attempting to work with our partners in the region to establish the security conditions that will allow these other priorities to be put into place in order to deal with some of the underlying reasons for the rise of terrorist and extremist activities there. So, absolutely concur.
Thank you. I agree, and thank you for that testimony.